So hello, everybody. We're a day early today. It's actually tomorrow, Monday, the 20th of October. Tomorrow is when the sun transitions from the days of pine to the days of gorse. So we're a day early today, and that's because I'm traveling tomorrow. I won't be able to squeeze in a Zoom session. So it's the first time in over 4 years that I haven't been doing Zoom at the exact day. So that's pretty good going. So tomorrow, then, the sun goes into gorse, and we're going to be looking tonight at the mythology of the Cwn Annwn, the hounds of the other world. I'm just going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation. Nearly there. There we go. Okay. So just very quickly, gorse, very special plant because gorse takes us up to the moment of Sawain, the cross-quarter festival between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. It's the first plant of the wild heath. The next one is heather. So you have gorse and heather side by side. They're the wild heath. And the midpoint between them is the moment of Sawain, which, to be technical, is the 15th degree of Scorpio, the midpoint of Scorpio. That's the exact midpoint between autumn equinox and winter solstice. So it works really well with the mythology of the wild hunt running across the wild heath, and we're going to be looking at the wild hounds into that. If you want the basic lore of the gorse, you need to look for gorse on the Owen Grove YouTube channel for 2022. 2022 was the year we did basic information. For herbalism and apothecary lore for the gorse, you want 2023. And for gods and goddesses of the Celtic mythology that correspond with gorse and Sawain, you want gorse 2024. So this year, we're looking at Grove cards from the Owen Grove Oracle deck. And just as a heads up, it's on my mind because we're getting closer to the end of the year. I've pretty much decided that next year we'll be back to basics, primarily looking at the Irish manuscript tradition, and everything's in a document called the Book of Ballymote, and we're going to look at the word kennings in that and the earliest evidence for the tree lore and all of that. So that will be 2026 will be like back to the Irish roots, back to the archives, if you like, with an emphasis on using those word kennings to do readings with the Owen. So it will be suitable for beginners too. Anyway, on the right-hand side, descending downwards, you have the pine tree, and then gorse, and then heather, aspen, and yews at the very, very bottom. So this is where we are. We're on the fourth final ACMA, final quarter of the year for the Northern Hemisphere. It's a time of year when the seeds are going into the ground. You know, the fruits come off the trees, the seeds are in the fruits, and they decay into the soil. And that was the natural rhythm of the beginning of next year's harvest, if you like, those seeds going into the ground. And it corresponds with mystery traditions of initiates descending into darkness or mystery rites before rising again, like Taliesin at Beltane. We've looked at those ideas. So the mystery for this quarter of the year is the Sawain mystery, of course. And tomorrow we transition from pine to gorse, and gorse will take us to the midpoint of Scorpio, Sawain, the wild heath. So that's what's illustrated in the bottom right-hand corner here. It's very much like the pine trees are where you prepare to do the wild hunt. And now we're in the wild hunt. And that's why I've chosen this time to look at the grove card of the Cwn Annwn. So that they're Welsh words. The first word is Cwn, C-W-N, and that's just an old Welsh word for hound, dogs, plural. Plural is Cwn, C-W-N. Singular is C-I. One hound on its own. So I think that's pronounced Kai or Sai. And that would be a single one, but Cwn is plural. And Annwn, A-N-N-W-N, because of older writers in the 1800s and the 20th century, they often saw it as a kind of underworld or otherworld, and it often described as a Celtic Hades. So it ended up getting this kind of reputation as some hellish domain. And there are folklore of the hounds being hellhounds, being wish hounds or yell hounds, and they take souls to the devil and all of that. You know, it's very much Hound of the Baskervilles and Sherlock Holmes, those kind of ideas. But that's not what Annwn means. We have a better understanding of the word Annwn these days, and this understanding is from Cardiff University in Wales. You break Annwn down into two. The first part is An, A-N, just An means inner. And the second bit, N-W-N, just means world. So a more accurate translation of Annwn is your inner world. That is your psychic world, or your world of dreams and visions, your world of inspiration, your imaginal world, you know. So that's the inner world, and every interaction you have with the spirit realm or psychic realm is inside you. You know, it's part of your psyche and your spiritual makeup and so on. So then if you think of the Cwn Annwn, what are they? You know, these are spirit hounds of your inner world. You know, and if you go on a shamanic journey to find treasures in your inner world, it's your inner world hounds that are going to be hunting with you. You know, so that they're more to do with that than any kind of Christian concept of hell or Hades or some dark underworld. It led to ideas that they were grabbing souls and taking them to hell and all those kind of ideas, but it's not true. Anyway, we'll touch on some of those ideas as we move along. The image itself for the grove cards, the bottom part of the image is the three hounds, and I've done them as Irish wolfhounds, just because that's an indigenous type of hound for the British Isles. And they are big dogs for hunting stags and deer and wolves and so on. And I've done it as a triple hound, and that's very deliberate, thinking of classical Greek mythology and three-headed Cerberus watching the gate to the other world, the underworld, Hades and stuff. So that bit of fun is there. The upper part of the image is the year wheel of the winter months. So on the left-hand side, you have Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius takes you to the 12 o'clock position, and then the cusp between Sagittarius and Capricorn is winter solstice. And then you go into Aquarius and Pisces, and at the end of Pisces, you'd be at the spring equinox with Aries for a new agricultural year, if you like. So this is the season of the hunt, if you like, from Libra onwards. And we're now going from the last few days of Libra into the days of Scorpio, and the midpoint of Scorpio, as I've said, Sawain. And the white hart, the white stag, is the figurehead for the winter months, just as the red bull is the figurehead for the summer months. So you can see the wild hunt simplistically as chasing the white stag. You know, it is a winter hunting activity, which turned into a kind of psychopompic mythology of the heroic warriors leading those who have died to the spirit world, rather than hellhounds seizing people and taking them to hell. You know, it's a psychopompic wild chase to the Milky Way, if you like, and then it takes you all the way to winter solstice and the rebirth, the reincarnation, the rebirth of the sun. So that explains the image slightly. Now, this is my own shaggy dog story, and it's true story as well. So this is an example of a visitation by a Cwn Annwn in the dream world, or my inner world. Happened around the year 2000. I can't remember exactly. It might have been 1999 or the year 2000. But I had a very lucid dream. I was living south of Bristol, a place called Dundry, in a dairy farm. And I had this vivid dream of this very strange dog come up to my bedroom window. And it was a weird dog. It was almost like a zombie. It didn't look alive. It looked dead. But it kind of looked pathetic, like there was something really mournful or sad about it. And as much as its facial expression was kind of dead, its eyes were kind of sad puppy dog eyes. It was just a very strange dream. But in the dream, after the dog got my attention at the windowsill, it ran off. And in my dream, I chased it. And that's the key thing. It's a otherworld hound, and I chased it. So what happened then, I woke up and I wrote it down, but it coincided with other things I was involved in at that time. And it coincided about a week later of me going to a house in Somerset, where an interesting woman had lived in the 1920s, a lady called Catherine Maltwood, and she's famous for her ideas about the Somerset landscape, which I'll come to. But what it led me to, this hound of the other world or inner world, was this thing. So this is the head of a giant hound in Somerset. And where its ear is a place called Ear Lake Moor. And there's other place names that kind of talk about its dogginess. Now, this is just a shape in the landscape, and its nose is an old, possibly man-made barrow hill like Silbury Hill with a ruined church on top. It's called Borough Mump. Now, if you know about the Michael line, the biggest ley line in the south of England, it goes through Borough Mump and then it goes through Glastonbury Tor. It goes through many places dedicated to St. Michael, like St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall. And the church on this dog's nose is dedicated to St. Michael, just like the tower on Glastonbury Tor, dedicated to St. Michael. So anyway, this dog and my awareness of it came literally a week or two after that weird zombie dog dream that I had. And here's the girt dog of Langport. Now, from its nose to its tail, it's 5 miles long. It's ridiculous. You know, you can only see it from the sky, from an aeroplane. Is it real? Is it man-made? Is it just what they call simulacra? Doesn't matter. You know, the pilots flying their aeroplanes in the 1920s, doing their first attempts at aerial photography, believed in it. It looked like a dog, and they talked about it. Now, its tail is at a little village called Wag. You know, it's ludicrous, this thing. Now, there was an old wassailing song. Wassailing is a kind of ceremony for apple orchards that's done on Old Christmas Day, the 6th of January. And in the Oxford Book of Carols, there's this wassailing song think it's just called the Somerset Wassail. And it sings about the girt dog of Langport burnt its long tail, and this is the night we go singing wassail. This is the girt dog of Langport, huge, and its tail at Wag was burnt during the Battle of Langport in 1645. They cut down the apple orchards there to make their encampments before the battle. So it's a weird thing. It's a shaggy dog story, but there's many intrigues with it. Like the wassailing song was compiled into the Oxford Book of Carols by a chap called Sabine Baring Gould, famous for compiling all the literature about the Celtic saints. But he also wrote books about Dartmoor, and that inspired the story of the Hounds of the Baskervilles and stuff. The girt dog, you can see on the bottom left-hand corner, is a guardian effigy to a bigger intrigue called the Glastonbury zodiac. So the woman's house that I visited after my zombie dog dream was Catherine Maltwood, and she discovered or claimed to discover the Glastonbury zodiac. I'm not bothered whether people believe in it or not. I don't believe in it all the time. I change my mind about it all the time, but it's full of enigmas. And whether it's real or not, for me, didn't matter, because for my own personal life journey, it meant I ended up living in Glastonbury for 20 years or 18 years. And most of that time, because of the Glastonbury zodiac, was spent with a handful of friends talking about star lore. So all of the star lore that I have in my head that I've then related to the Wheel of the Year and then the 20 Trees of the Ogham was born of this dog, this dog from the other world, and just following Annwn, following the inner world. I'm just about to bring out, hopefully by Christmas, an illustrated guide to the Glastonbury zodiac, but it's ongoing. Even in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a knight figure with a stylized three-headed dog on his shield. And that corresponds with the girt dog of Langport guarding the zodiac. But there's things there that I've incorporated to the Ogham. So like at the very bottom, there's a three-headed serpent, and that's Hydra the water serpent, which is the third acma of the Ogham, goes from Cancer through Leo, Virgo, Libra, and so on. And in between the three-headed Hydra and the three-headed shield, the dog on the shield, there's a big platter of apples. And that's deliberate as well. That's because the summer solstice moment is the time of apples. And the platter is a way of acknowledging the mysteries of John the Baptist being decapitated, which is a summer solstice intrigue and stuff. So rather than do a decapitated head, I've just done a platter full of apples. But it's all the same star lore, if you like. So it's just one example of how dogs or even wolves in your dreams and visions could be messengers from your inner world, from Annwn. Now, going then to the star lore of the wintertime, and this is where the hounds of the hunt originate. This is an asterism. Asterism just means star pattern. So it's not a constellation, it's a pattern in the stars, an asterism. And this asterism is known as the winter hexagon. And it's made of 6 bright stars from 6 different constellations that make a rather pronounced hexagon shape in the night sky in the northern hemisphere in the wintertime. Now, the main parts of it, you could see the whole thing as a kind of story or picture board or iconography written in the heavens. And it is expressed in different ways by different cultures and different stories. Running through the hexagon, there's a slightly lighter blue river, and that river is the Milky Way. Now, below the Milky Way, in the bottom left-hand side, is Canis Major. Canis Major is the great hound, the great dog. And it's the brightest star in the night sky for the Northern Hemisphere. Is the bright star Sirius, is the dog star. So that's one corner of the hexagon, is Sirius, of the great hound. North of it, on the other side of the Milky Way River, is Canis Minor, the little dog. So you have a big hound and a little hound. And that's here on the Glastonbury zodiac too. So you've got the big hound at the bottom, the girt dog of Langport, and a lesser known hound is called the Pedwell hound, found by a lady called Janet Jackson in the 1970s. And a bit like the Milky Way, one's below the Michael line, ley line, and one's above it. So it's kind of like making the Michael line, ley line, the Milky Way in a way. So there's two hounds there, there's two dogs. But the main figure is on the right-hand side is Orion. The constellation of Orion is the winter hunter. So throughout the winter months, all the way until sort of February, the winter hunter and his hounds dominate the night sky in the Northern Hemisphere. From a Celtic perspective, during the time of the stag, during the months of the stag, the months of the hunting, in the night sky, there's a winter hunter with hounds, two hounds on either side of the Milky Way. Then other parts of the hexagon are Taurus, the head of Taurus and its bright eye. And you've got the Gemini twins. And then top right-hand side, you've got Capella from the constellation of Auriga, a chariot. All of these are expressed in the Welsh story called Cwn Annwn. And I've written like a 50-page study of that in volume 6 of our journal, Voices from the Grove. So all of these relate to the wild hunt in that story, whether it's the two twins and the hounds, two brothers and the hounds, or it's the winter hunter and his hounds, or it's the person with the chariot and the big monster Taurus, corresponds with like the Irish god Lugh fighting Balor of the one eye. And in the Cwn Annwn story, Cilwch throws a spear into the eye of Ysbyddaden Bengawa, the giant. So that's all there. It's the winter hexagon wild hunt expressed by different stories, but the simple motifs are the hunter and his hounds. Now, on the left-hand side, remember all of this is born from 18 years of talking nonsense and star lore with friends looking into the Glastonbury zodiac, but I learned a lot about Northern Hemisphere star lore. So on the left-hand side are the winter and summer stars of the Northern Hemisphere. At the bottom, you can see the winter hexagon, and the Milky Way runs through it. And as the Milky Way runs through, it goes up. And at the top, there's a triangle. It's called the summer triangle. It's another asterism. And that triangle of the summer months is three birds. Sometimes in some stories, it's three golden apples. But there are three bird constellations there. In between the winter hexagon and the summer triangle, there's a constellation on its own on the Milky Way. And that's the very important constellation of Cassiopeia, Queen of the Heavens. It's the goddess Isis. In Welsh mythology, it's the goddess Dawn. Cassiopeia, the constellation to the northern Welsh, was known as Llysdawn, the court of the mother goddess, who corresponds in Ireland with the mother goddess Danu. So the mother goddess is always in the night sky. She's circumpolar. She never sets below the horizon, whereas the winter stars and the summer stars come and go. There are other circumpolar stars, Draco the dragon and the Big Bear and the Little Bear. They're always present too, but only Cassiopeia, the mother goddess, is on the Milky Way. So she often depicted as her breasts, the W shape of the constellation, and the Milky Way flowing from the mother goddess. Anyway, here's a thing. In the summer months, when the three birds or three golden apples or the summer triangle is in the night sky, the hunter and his hounds are below the horizon. Symbolically, the hunter and his hounds are in the underworld. They're below the horizon. You can't see them. They're in the hills. You know, they're in the ground. They've gone below the horizon. And the opposite happens in the wintertime. So when in the wintertime, you can see the hunter and the hounds in the night sky, and the three birds are below the horizon. They're in the underworld, just like Proserpina or Persephone. You know, the goddess of the summertime is in the underworld until the next summertime when she's back. So that's kind of played in those seasonal cycles. Now that's depicted on the right-hand side on the famous Gunderstruck cauldron. You'll see on either side of the goddess's head, there's a big bird, and in her upraised hand, there's a small bird. So the summer triangle is two big birds, Cygnus the swan and Aquila the eagle. And there's a small constellation that we call Lyra the harp, but many ancient cultures saw it as a smaller bird. So the three birds are raised up in this image on the Gunderstruck cauldron. So with the three birds up in the sky, then the hunter and hound are below the horizon, or they're upside down. And if you look below her breasts, you can see a dog and a man falling upside down. So it's a wonderful bit of star lore in the Gunderstruck cauldron. When the three birds are up, the hunter and his hounds are upside down below the horizon. The seasonal changing of the stars. So here's a thing then, how can we learn from that more about the Cwn Annwn? Well, on the Gunderstruck cauldron, there's also this figure, which we've looked at in the previous Zoom session for the pine tree. And this figure, Cwn Annwn, is holding a round torque and a serpent by serpent's neck, so the serpent's head, are two constellations. There's the Corona Borealis, the northern crown, and the serpent's caput are there corresponding with the days of pine into gorse. So this figure is holding that moment. And the stag next to him and his own pair of antlers make the W shape of the mother goddess between the winter stars and the summer stars. But looking to the right now, you'll see he's got hounds. We've already looked at the stag and bull on the left-hand side, but on his right-hand side, he's got hounds. So the winter hunter with his winter hunter headdress, the antlers, also has hounds. Now there is archaeological evidence of a Celtic god for the southwest of England, in Wiltshire and in Gloucestershire and here and there, but mainly in the south, of this god called Cuno Maglos. And Cuno Maglos means hound lord or lord of hounds. So that Cuno is the same as Cwn Annwn, lord of hounds. So who is the lord of hounds? Well, this is the problem we have with Celtic mythology and research. We've got archaeology of various gods and goddesses that were worshipped and venerated and in England and Britain that in Roman times. like Cunomaglos, like Brigantia, like Nematona, that these names are inscribed in stone, but there are no stories about them written by the medieval monks. What you get by the medieval monks are stories about a winter hunter and his hounds. So in the Mabinogion, the first branch of the Mabinogi is the story of Pwyll, Prince of Dyfed, and he meets a god called Arawn, who is hunting with his Cwn Annwn. You know, straight away, that's there at the beginning. The Cwn Annwn have chased a stag and got the stag down, and Pwyll witnesses it happening and meets the god of the hunt, who then exchanges places with him. That goes on to tell the story of the Cwn Annwn, and Pwyll's a Welsh king who has a whole adventure in Annwn, or the other world, or the underworld, or the inner world. But it's an example of the Cwn Annwn, the mystical hounds of the hunter. There's a lovely statue here, a figurine from a temple near the River Severn, temple at Lydney. And this is an authentic Romano-Celtic hound from the Temple of Nodens there. Nodens was equated with the god Silvanus, and Nodens is also thought to be the father of the winter hunter of Glastonbury, who's known as Neath, N-U-D-D, Neath. The Temple of Nodens is a Romano version of that. And Cunomaglos in Wiltshire was also equated with Silvanus and Diana, so god and goddesses of the hunt. So hounds and hunting are part of that West Country otherworld thing. So here's a mural I did some years ago in Glastonbury of Gwyn ap Neath, who's the local Somerset and Welsh version of the winter hunter. And he has his hounds, which are shown on the right-hand side. Again, I've done them as Irish wolfhounds, but they've become a big part of Glastonbury lore now. Here's a lovely illustration by a friend of mine called Alan Royce, and it shows Gwyn leading the wild hunt at a Glastonbury tour with hounds at the front chasing. In Glastonbury during the winter months, from the centre of town where there's an old monument, and more importantly from its Iron Age lake village towards Godney, if you're looking in the direction of the tour throughout the winter months, the constellation of Orion, followed by the great hound Canis Major, go racing across the night sky. So there's what we call a hollow hill. You know, if the constellation comes out of that hill, that god or goddess must live in that hill, you know, so the tour then becomes the Hill of Gwyn ap Neath, Hill of the Winter Hunter. So another picture on the left-hand side by Alan, showing Gwyn ap Neath with hounds in the foreground again. So they're an important part of the whole mystery of the wild hunt. And we played it out in the year 2016. On the right-hand side is my friend Alan, who did the cartoon on the left. And he came up with a simple way of making a mask that looks like a hound or a wolf for people to wear. So in the ceremony at Sawain in 2016, we had the god Gwyn ap Neath being carried on a big kind of Celtic throne by 8 people. So there were 4 people on each side, and each one had one of these dog head masks. So as it went up the high street in Glastonbury, it was Gwyn ap Neath, the winter hunter, with the hounds of Annwn helping him go up the road. And you see it here. Very simple but magical, you know, to actually have the wild hunter going through the town up to Glastonbury tour, where we lit a bonfire at Sawain and people honoured their ancestors. For a long time, Glastonbury had kind of followed Halloween in a kind of scary monster kind of American thing, with, and also from South America with places like Mexico, the kind of Day of the Dead, where there's lots of skull faces and top hats. You know, it's kind of like that kind of imagery. But there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not how I imagine the spirit of my grandmother, as a kind of skeleton with a top hat or anything. You know, wanted to do something that honoured the ancestors. You know, so it was that. And what we did in 2016 is there were two ladies part of this, and they gathered from people that attended, and there were about 800 people there. People wrote down on pieces of paper the names of loved ones who had died, you know, that were in the next world. And these two priestesses gathered all those bits of paper, and they part of the procession to the tour, and they used all of those scraps of paper with loved ones' names on to light the bonfire at Sawain. It was a way of calling the ancestors and being with the ancestors. And it was an incredible, poignant moment on Glastonbury tour. So before I finish, the Hounds of Hell have been used in Hammer horror films and all sorts of folklore stories. There are paranormal stories of black dogs. A common name for a black dog is Shuck, S-H-U-C-K. Black Shuck is a common spectre, ghost, ghostly hound throughout the British Isles. And it's also used by different people for different things. I came across this in a maritime museum on the island of Jersey, and it's to do with smugglers on the Isle of Jersey in the 1800s. There already was folklore of a ghostly black hound. And what happened was, and that goes back to like the 1600s, those stories. And what the smugglers were doing in the 1800s is they created this outfit for someone to wear to scare people away from their smuggling activities. You know, so it's like Scooby-Doo or something, you know, where there's actually so it makes you wonder, you know, some of the sightings that people have of black hounds could have been thieves or smugglers or whatever, people trying to scare people away from nighttime activities. So there's a lot of fun there. This is the information. It's Old Norman French is the language they speak in Jersey. So the chien de Boulay, the dog of Boulay Bay. Yeah, fun. You can see on the left someone wearing the headdress. So whether it's the Cwn Annwn, the dogs of the other world, some people see them as more demonic and scary. And I did paint my own aspen stave that way. On the right-hand side is my aspen stave. And I deliberately made them a bit ferocious. But I also made them white with red ears, which is what the Cwn Annwn should be. They should be white with red ears. That's the mythology of them. So they're spirit hounds. They're not regular hounds. And when I painted my stave, I did want that kind of scary energy. But now I see it very differently. Now I see it as the wild hunt racing towards the aspen trees, leading souls to the star realm. So it's up to you in your inner world how those hounds appear to you. So back to this image then, in a card reading with the Owen Grove Oracle deck, if this came up in your reading, from my perspective, I would say that the hounds have come to you because you're being called to go on an inner world quest. You know, you're meant to follow them into the 6 months of winter, which is symbolic of going into the dream world, you know. So even if it's just a 10-minute shamanic journey you're doing. You know, follow the hounds, see where they lead you. They're the messengers from the wild hunt, and they're the messengers from the inner world calling you to go on a quest. So that was my thoughts with the Oracle deck. So I'll stop sharing. You can put your microphones on and talk about the hounds of the hunt.
Yeah, I'd like to say quite a few things. I'll try to keep it short. First of all, I'd like to say your illustration of Gorse, I really, really love. It is so beautiful. Now, you know, I do the Kingston Zodiac and the guardian dog. You ask permission of the guardian dog to enter the Zodiac. And I just love it because the nearest star to the guardian dog is Sirius, which of course is the dog star, which, you know, slowly, I've put all these little bits together as I've started studying it. And it is a really lovely thing that my younger daughter, Victoria, has actually, she and her partner bought a house right at the base of St. Ann's Hill, which is where the Kingston Zodiac dog is. So it's like she's sitting there at the bottom of the guardian dog, which was somewhere I was going for years before they bought that house, which I thought was quite amazing. And in the Gorse aspect, I have a drawing, I'll see if I can find it in a minute, and painting of Gorse, and in it is the wren. And part of the poem is about a little wren, you know, little wren, a small bird, mighty power. And it's about taking us in because we are now prepared to listen. You know, we've reached a point where we are going to listen to the wren in amongst the gorse. Okay, I could go on, but that's what I'm going to say for now.
No, I mean, there's more star lore, which you just didn't have time to go into, maybe another time. But in the winter hexagon and the summer triangle, there are two important gateways. You call them star gates, and they're where the sun's ecliptic and the Milky Way cross. So they were seen as gateways to the spirit world or gateways to the Milky Way. So the winter hunter with his upraised arm is actually pointing to that gateway. So he's literally, he and his hound are leading you to the gateway to the Milky Way star realm. You know, it's an amazing bit of iconography. That's just written in the stars. Annie, can't hear you.
What Rosemary just said is fascinating because Saint Anne Christian overlay on Annwn, that location, it being part of this dog myth of that exact place. I find that just something. My name being Anne, I notice these kinds of Anne things, but yeah. Saint Anne, maybe there's a reason why that church was named there or that spot.
Yeah, it's the hill, St. Anne's Hill. And there's also, it's interesting because it was through Chris Street. There's actually a well, St. Anne's Well. There's, you know, there's all sorts of things. But Chris Street, who's in spirit now, bless him, he pointed out to me that there was another one. And we went looking for it, and it was covered over with brambles and things, but we found it. And that's even more ancient. And it's, you can go on and on and on with all these things. Step by step, you're shown things that actually help you realize what you're doing. Because I didn't, when I first went into it, Anne, I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, we're learning with all these names that they're connected through the different languages. Yeah, so if we hear them enough, you know, even if you can't spell them well, you keep hearing this same sound, this phonetic sound, the Annwn, the Saint Anne, and then the Cernunnos that I've been really into for years as a Celtic pagan here in the U.S., but not knowing any of these stories that now we're hearing, as the Stag King or the Stag Lord. And it turns out the Stag Lord is Lord of the Hounds. If you see the name Cernunnos, which is how I'm pronouncing it here in the U.S., being the same thing as Pono Maglus, this Lord of Hounds, I'm mispronouncing as well, but there's these names keep passing through. Cwn Annwn, I mean Canunos. They're totally in this same root element of a spoken language that didn't really have its writing, its written.
And
Of course,
it needs some investigation, but the Cuno Maglos inscription in Wiltshire is also connected to the Roman god Apollo. So they call him Apollo Cuno Maglos, but Apollo's a god of healing. And on the River Severn at the Temple of Lydney, it was thought that it was a place of healing, and the dogs somehow represent healing through Apollo and through their ability to lick wounds. But also at the Temple of Lydney, they had cells or rooms that they believed were used for healing dreams, some sort of dreaming incubators or stuff, and that's the archaeological academic speculation about it, that they were dreams for healing.
it's deep.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oh, are we on?
Yeah.
Yes, Amy.
Are we on?
Well,
I think about how it's sort of bubbled up to contemporary culture. This may be silly, but we have the werewolf this time of year. A friend of mine's favorite movie is the original of the old Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi werewolf movie with the gypsies and the cards and all of that. And then there's Sirius Black, Harry Potter's godfather, who was a shapeshifter into the Black Hound, and his name was Sirius Dogstar. So I always thought that was interesting. But it's still bubbling up into our culture.
In the Lord of the Rings films by Peter Jackson, the hobbits are following Aragorn into the wilderness, and they say, "Where are we going?" And he just says, "Into the wild." And then the next scene, he's hunting a stag.
Oh, wow.
It's just the symbolism's there, and it just finds its way through. Amazing.
It is.
It was really interesting this morning. I've been working with a crystal that belonged to a friend of mine that created, she just passed on not too long ago, but she created like ley line, I'm not sure what terminology, she calls it the Wildcat water wheel, and it hooks in with other circles in our area, and go across the United States. Somebody was showing me a map. But anyways, I have this crystal and I want to put it in as part of one of her circles. And I just, I've been sitting with this crystal for about a month, and I just brought her to mind and, sort of was like wondering if she had a message for me, because I'm on a planet on the new moon. And I got this image of a dog.
Wow.
And yeah. And today we're having this Zoom meeting, which was really wild. But yeah, and I just heard Sirius. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not sure what this is calling me to, right? Because now I'm having conversations with people that were involved in creating this wheel. And so, my one friend is like, well, we can activate the whole wheel and, send people out to put something at the other spots. And, another friend that, had some other ideas, but, it's just interesting. It feels like this journey.
Yeah, that's interesting, Jenny, because it is the dog that you go to first to ask permission to enter the zodiac. And when I came across the Kingston zodiac, I knew nothing about the Glastonbury zodiac. So but it's the same in the Glastonbury zodiac. It's like the dog is there standing guard, and if you ask permission, then you're given grace to go in and then work through all the other signs. It's and I've visually seen how things have changed. I mean, when we first worked with Capricorn in Chiswick, it was as black as Newgate's knocker, the energy. And then I found out that the Rockefellers had had it for a long time, and it was really quite scary Mary energy there. And now it's the energy over the last 10 years has risen, and you can visually see it, and it's amazing. It's amazing, amazing. But it is the dog, so you're given the dog. Because you're being asked to go in.
Lovely.
You're being asked to go in.
Thank you.
Or you're asking yourself to go in, shall I say?
Let me just expand on that a little bit, because it's really useful, I think. Rosemary's talking about the Kingston zodiac, and I've been talking about the Glastonbury zodiac. And for a lot of people, they're contentious things because it seems too crazy, too surreal. But strip it down to real simple ideas that whatever your territory is, whatever your land is, your sacred place, your grove or garden, even wherever you're working with the land, the center of that territory is going to relate to the center of the stars.
Okay.
And then it's all mirrored and reflected. So if you have a center point, like the Druids of Gaul in Roman times, they met at the center of their kingdom, and it corresponded in the Bronze Age with the dragon. The Draco the dragon was at the center point, you know. So then you have stories of Llys and Llefelys in the Mabinogion, where the dragons are brought down to the center of his kingdom and all those kind of ideas. But the simple thing is that even if it's just your own grove or your living room, if you're standing in the center of your sacred circle, the center point goes to the pole star, and then all the rest of the zodiac or the stars are mirrored down below. As above, so below, heaven and earth, you know. So with these landscape zodiacs, even if you think they're invented, as kind of sympathetic magic, you're working with the heavens, you're working with the stars, you know, and strange things happen. You know, the land remembers, and that the land talks to people psychically and stuff, and the visions come. So you're back then to the inner world. So, you know, these landscape zodiacs might not be real in an archaeological way, but they're very real in a psychic way. You know, I've met too many people that have had profound experiences on them, you know. So somehow the sacred waters of the land, or the energies of the land, or the memory of the land becomes what people sing to it, you know. Yeah. So whatever sacred landscape you're working on, your center point is going to connect with the stars at the center of the night sky.
So the ancient cathedrals that were built to focus points, like you're saying, and Chartres would have been on the sacred point of the Druids' actual meeting of the center of their kingdom of Gaul, is now this focal point that's continuing on through the entire Christian litany history of continuing to focus that energy, and people are creating the focus as well as having found it there. They're fomenting and honoring and magnifying it. So
yeah.
it does all seem to fit with how we choose to continue to live our lives with these focal points.
So keeping it really simple, like wherever you lived, wherever your hometown was, there's going to be a center point. That's the basic. And there's always going to be seasonal stars that come and go, winter stars and summer stars. So wherever your village is, those seasonal stars are going to come and go. And the center point is always going to correspond with the mother goddess at the center of the Milky Way, Draco the dragon, the big bear, and the little bear, because they're always at the center.
Yeah. This is kind of off, but not. In your card, your oracle card, where the knight is at the bottom and the bowl of apples is, you've put oak leaves around. And I'm sure there must have been a reason that you did that.
Simplistically, I like the motif of oak king and holly king for winter and summer. So I would put
Okay.
oak, I would put oak with the summer and holly with the winter, you know.
Because up the top you had the tree, and that's obviously got the oak, not the oak, the apple leaves.
Yeah, you're
And then
very
I thought,
observant.
yes, but that's because I love your artwork and I look at it because it tells a story, Yuri. And the more you look at these things, the more you see. And I think sometimes the artists themselves don't actually know how much they're putting into something. Sometimes it takes somebody to observe. That's what happened with the Kingston Zodiac, because she was teaching the Kingston Zodiac, the Glastonbury Zodiac. And then one of her students said, but why don't you do one for your own area, Kingston? And that was what she did. So it's from there that she had the idea, and because she knew Mortwood as well, I believe, didn't she? I think she did. They worked together. Yeah.
She
So-
wrote to Catherine Maltwood just too late, and she had a reply from Catherine Maltwood's husband. And that when Mary had heard about the Glastonbury Zodiac, at that moment, Catherine had died. And so Mary felt like psychically a baton had been passed on
to her,
So-
yes.
So she didn't
Yes.
talk to Catherine, but she had correspondence with Catherine's widow.
And her talking, her writing is quite highbrow and very sort of got a lot in it. It doesn't flow,
No.
her writing. Sorry, Mary, but it doesn't. And it's true. But the interesting thing is, somebody who's trained with me, I may have told you this before, Kim, she started training with me when she was 17 and she'll be 50 next February. It took her years to realize she was actually at school with Mary's granddaughter. So I said to her, could you please ask her, is it all right with the family that I'm actually carrying on her work? And the reply came back, they're really pleased because nobody in the family has done anything with it.
Oh, wow.
And it's very interesting because I don't like big groups. In the beginning, I had miscellaneous people and they wanted to do this and they wanted to do that. And my little teeny groups, we do it very calmly. We stop and have a cup of tea, like you do, Yuri, and it's more relaxed. And we're definitely doing it. Yeah, sorry, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, that's all. Only because we're running out of time, Rosemary, and it could go on and on and on. We could talk zodiacs for years, I know. All right, then. So we better do our meditation to the Gorse. And so if you put your microphones off, and I'll stop recording.